talk of more omnipresence, and I definitely agree with much of what Paul and Nicole were saying. We need to deputize ourselves. Sean, let's take you as an example. My understanding is you train really hard in MMA. I'm guessing you train with your firearm as well. We
I
each
do.
need to empower ourselves not to be a victim. Bystander apathy is what occurred, is the term used as this gentleman walked with a long gun down the street. No one said anything. I'd be curious to see how many 911 calls were made. We need to deputize ourselves. If you would have seen that person, you would have acted a lot different, as would have I. These businesses that have security in the lobbies, there's a knee-jerk reaction. They may enhance it, but they do a cost-benefit analysis, and it'll go right back to the same. Only when respect is given back to the police officers, when we end this defund the police, when we end these sending in therapists or counselors, will people respect and, yes, be slightly afraid that I might get taken out before I do anything. We see this perpetrator, this sicko, as well as criminals all over the country, not respecting the law, feeling they can do what they want. Only when we collectively push back, fight back, and act will this lessen and hopefully stop.
It's sad. I do think people need situational awareness. And if you see something, say something. Make the phone call the police, try and get on top of it. Guy walking through the streets with a rifle, that's the moment you need to call the police. Bill Stanton, we appreciate you.
I like what this guy is saying. This video today is not necessarily about the particular commenter on fact. I've been thinking about this shooter and what happened in Manhattan last week. 2 points here that I want to make. Living in cities, that people in general living and working in large cities, where everybody working, if it's pretty tight quarters. We have a large population crammed into basically a small place. New York City is huge. I understand that. But it's just put people closer, but mentally and emotionally, psychologically, there's a huge gap. There's very little to no connection. Unless something major happens. One big event that sticks to my mind forever, it's I live in, and I what happened to be in DC. I know exactly the time and where I was in training that day. And I was also working in law enforcement at the time. And I will always remember that is deeply ingrained because there's an emotional attachment to that event. But there will always be an emotional attachment. So that's until my dying days. That's going to be one day that I will always remember clearly. But people living in cities, they seem to get over, and 9/11 being that just one example, and I'm moving to last week's shooting in a moment. It just emphasizes how one huge event, huge violent event, made people want to be more connected. It just encouraged patriotism, love of country. It did, which is manifested in many ways that were more positive in that moment in time, we all noticed that the other guys also live in the world. It's not just about each individual, which happens in a city. They're not light places to be. People seem to be more aggressive in nature, especially lately in the past several years. It just seems more normalized for people to engage in violent behavior or simply just being discourteous and more confrontational with others. And I find that to be fascinating. But if we fast forward to last week, decades after that terrible event, this is not a unifying event because to me, this signifies that we've grown and accepted collectively that this type of violence, that can be considered workplace violence because an external factor, an external threat came into that workplace. This guy simply had a very simple strategy. He just simply walked up to start it, drove up, parked, and just a time of day. It should have been either first thing in the morning where traffic jams and more people entering the building versus exiting. But he also was keen on observing that during quitting time is equally busy and just as It's easier to blend in. When he was the anomaly, what is normal, and I want to say about appearances that just like this retired officer said, he wants to know, and I'm also curious to see how many 911 calls were logged into the system that day, because possibly many people saw the gunman and thought it was slightly peculiar, but they're not making that connection in real time. They're not responding to it really quickly. Like, why is this guy walking up, getting out of his car and walking out to the buildings, going into that building very calmly, very businesslike, very intentional. And I think that's part of it. If, and sometimes people get an advice with someone like, that they don't belong someplace, and they get advice from someone randomly. They say, oh, you just act like you belong there. Like you really should be there. And this guy did not belong there in any way, given his objective, which I would have seen clearly as an anomaly that should have been reported quickly. But then for some reason, the people who saw him, and people saw him, but he acted in a way that would be his silhouette was normal. His countenance was normal as someone can get, in that he did not act as though he was police. Because I would level with you, police or any law enforcement or security people, that we have a type, and some of us recognize that guy's a fed or that guy's a foul. There's something in how we carry ourselves, even though sometimes officers may do some undercover work. I've done a little bit. We worked in one case where I was actually bait a long time ago. That was a fun assignment. We did get the guy. No, he did not come after me, sadly. I really wanted that rush of adrenaline, this body investigation, but all things considered, we expect it to look or act in a certain way. So, person that lawfully carrying a weapon, they exude that persona. For lack of a better word, they behave in a certain way. They carry properly. They have a weapon holstered. A long gun is not something that is normal unless you see police or maybe even military, depending where you are, where the observer is located in the type of environment, that this is normal. So what did the guy do? He simply acted normal. He got out of his car late in the day in Manhattan, and he walked towards this building with great intention, and he entered the lobby. Lobbies are easy to access because it's just high volume. And I'm going to move away from the gunman, because having it's not a sidearm, it's not holstered, it's just keeping it close to his body, ready to strike. But from a distance, unless you're sitting there looking at CCTV video, that live video feed, and going, wait a minute, that guy's carrying a rifle and he's headed for this building. That's probably a camera from the same building and from across the street or next door. So we have to figure out where that camera, this is the most widely disseminated piece of video so far. And from that vantage point, if you really didn't know what happened after he entered the building, then we're really not going to detect it. And this because collectively people have grown used to seeing something that in their environment that really only under a really limited number of circumstances would be normal. And that becomes normal. This was not a normal time or place to carry a firearm like that. Like I said, unless it was police. And police are clearly identifying themselves. Also, the way of carrying the weapon is something that triggers that this is not normal. Carrying it by his side is a form of concealment that is just really minimal, but it's very effective. I'm sure people who saw him didn't really stare until long after what happened, and then they connected the dots and they thought, oh, I saw that. So you get a lot of that insecurity and incidents where it's violence or witness accounts or police work, and people remember it's just really weird how the mind works. It doesn't seem real, but I thought I saw something. I heard many times a statement like that. They thought they saw something or suspected, but they didn't take action because they really didn't think that it was in the right place in the right time. And therefore, they thought whatever they saw was maybe their imagination and moved on, only to find out at some point in the future that what they saw was actually real. It was actually happening live and moving away from the gunman, entering but first of all, high-rise security is going to be flipped on its head. And if it isn't right now, it should be. Not because this is a huge vulnerability, because there are many buildings here, and DC is the same thing, or it could be Chicago, it could be anywhere, large city, small city. Most buildings are accessible. And if you have members of the public who don't work in certain buildings, but they suddenly have to access the buildings, then there's going to have to be an increased layer, or the system will have to be retooled to allow entry, maybe using a key fob. That's going to cost some money. I wouldn't say huge money, given the liability of someone entering the lobby of a high-rise building where many high-profile companies are tenants. So I'm sure that's what we're not hearing about is the legal side of it and insurance. And then it's probably not a pretty situation. And it's just not enough. There doesn't leave enough room for the grief of having to witness or having lost employees or coworkers or friends in a tragic event such as this. And how much security, how open can we be? 15, 20, 30 years back, a building is building, you enter the lobby, you encounter someone at least who greets you and ensures that you sign in, or there's some sort of even a really soft layer where it's not a deterrent. Like the one officer, I believe he's moonlighting. I never had to do that. I worked too many hours to even have to work part-time, but a young father, so has a young family. Clearly that's cop making extra money. I don't know why he was working that detail, but cops do that. Supplement. Sometimes it could be a special assignment that was arranged. Whatever the circumstances, that's the first person the bad guy takes out. The next person, unarmed, had a person's mind to run to try and shut down access to the elevators, but he perished in his attempt to do so. And still should be commended the security officer for his courage. What do we need to start implementing and using this case scenario? More layers or make them harder to penetrate. I've always believed that pre-vetting anyone who enters the building is a priority. And it may not be so in private sector, like the military or in government facilities or contract facilities that are associated with the U.S. government, that I would highly recommend it. I don't think that this is a major failure of security other than this high volume people traffic area, this lobby entering, and then you meet the person inside the gate who has to bet who's there. You should be expected and have an appointment, and someone should be able to come down and get you versus have any access to elevators or stairs. And it really should be in any building where the person does not live or work or do business daily. They should be pre-qualified. And I know that ruffles feathers everywhere. Security tries to bring this up and try to implement these measures because it's just not friendly. It's not friendly for business. It's not friendly for a company's image, or maybe the property management does not like to be that strict. And they believe that the security that they have in place is sufficient. They have highly trained security officers who work at the front desk and lobbies as concierge positions, and those are fully trained officers. They have security licenses and all that. And it's just a lower level of engagement, which is interesting because they're on the forefront of security. They're the first person any visitor encounters. And that could change, where it would just lie low and the industry will continue to operate in the same way. There should always be, if we're expecting someone's going to come down and get you an access badge. And it really should be, because clearly and like this guy was saying in that interview, we could self-deputize. Sure. People spend too much time, and this is my personal criticism. I think, and many people agree with this, that we spend too much time rushing to document that moment in time not for our own edification, mind you, but simply to share on social media. And I've done this before myself where I wanted to document something, but not an emergency. In an emergency, I call for help. And if something needs to be documented, then naturally, if it is safe, and the scene is safe, and it's okay to do so, to offer help to citizen and law enforcement both. And there's just too much consumerism video reels. And I understand it. I'm online like many other people in the world. And when crime is normalized, then it completely removes our ability to detect threats. And how is our society even going to survive if we don't even have just even a little bit of insight on what is normal in our environment, at what time, in the context of what is going on, and how we're becoming involved in preventing these tragedies. This isn't going to be advice for every time. I believe that once we start seeing what we see, we call it exactly what it is. And we don't try to analyze it beyond what it truly is. That's when we're going to start connecting with the other humans that live in cities surrounded by buildings and lots of traffic and too many distractions to allow our vision to actually narrow in on the security threats. And post 9/11, I'm totally surprised people are not more in tune with their senses. And it's sad because you have half the city's cops are there, of every possible jurisdiction. We're all there for one guy. And then he wasn't even going to be able to come out and explain the why and when and what, because that was his mission. His mission was to end it there. Part of it failed for something that he made a mistake, apparently got off on the wrong floor. He had to take out somebody. He's already way in too deep to back out, because on his way out, he's already taken out at least 2 people. So there's no point of return for him. And even in failure, this person is still operating. The question is, us who are law abiding, and even in security industry or in law enforcement, the citizens in general are not tuned in to what's going on. We have too many filters and distractions and priorities. And at some point, we're not thinking that we could be affected in any way. And I would foresee in these companies an increase, like I said, of security training. Just situational awareness is something that's used a lot. And I'm probably somebody out there, you may be watching, rolling your eyes. I used to roll my eyes before I entered the business. Situational awareness. What does that mean? What am I seeing? And what does that mean? And where do I fall? Do I get involved? And do I observe and report? And I think the general public would be open to receiving at least tips. Police departments do it all the time in maybe in small neighborhoods and some parts of any city where there's educational programs and some outreach programs that police engage in, and they talk to the public about how to report crimes. There's small steps. Police can't possibly cover everything every time. So how about us? And this is more of a philosophical question. It is very sad, but that means that the threats are always going to be there. The best detractor is preparedness. And it's mostly mental preparedness. And then secondly, it has to have an actual structure form of education or instruction that will help I could say the average person understand how to detect these anomalies. If you want to call it in the simulation, a guy walking out of his car holding a rifle to the side, it's just at minimum, just act like you belong there. And people will look the other way, or they will not consider that to be real. Only to find out, like I said, I want to reiterate that. If people are more hardy, psychologically hardy, they don't expect horrible things to happen, but they anticipate that if something horrible were to happen, they would be prepared emotionally in some fashion. They would have an idea of how to seek cover and escape a situation long enough to call it in. And maybe in that way, it may seem like just a very small token act, but it could turn out to be a huge life-saving measure. And I truly believe that. Like this officer said, self-deputize. We all have the responsibility to observe and report, regardless of our training and our backgrounds. And I can only hope that carries out. New York is a big place, and it's a big deal. A few days ago and over the weekend, it's already August, and there's just very little reported now. And it's just a huge wave up and down. And we have normalized criminal activity, or at least the tolerance is pretty high, whereby a lot of people may see something happening and not really connect the dot. That's something we need to rectify. And let's just start now. We shouldn't be able to have this type of event happen in a workplace. Conversely, before I sign off, I appreciate you being here and listening today. Hit that like button and the subscribe button as well. That will really help me out. I appreciate you stopping by. And I want to close remarks with there has to be more education within companies, and that it's a thankless job in security because there's always going to be some sort of a cost effect or element that's always going to keep maybe a manager or someone in corporate, depending on the company, on whether we should spend any money on something that's never happened. But then when it does happen, it's the security's fault or it's law enforcement's fault. I think that attitude would always be around. I was told by many instructors, pay now, pay later. And the training, it rings true. I have seen this in real life examples. Last week was a real life example that we should be free to move about country and to do business and all that, but there's always going to be bad actors and they have their own agendas. They may not be connected to a workplace. It may not be the guy that sits right next to you in your office who has a grudge and we're concerned about workplace violence, and people, the practitioners of this area of instruction, they're buzzing right now. I'm pretty sure that reconfiguring how we really need to train more to not to expect every time, but when you have a terrible event like that, it could come from anywhere. It could come from the inside, people that we know, or it could come from an outside. The most recent one that I saw was in Virginia following the shooting. It's pretty disturbing because it had nothing to do with the workplace where this happened, but it definitely affected a lot of people. This is the sense of innocence is completely wiped away. Here, let me share my screen with you. This happened in Virginia. The young councilman, and I'd heard of him, but it's just, I don't live in Virginia anymore. And I was just totally surprised to see that this actually happened at the bands. I'm not going to play the video for you. Already taken up enough time, but he was dousing gasoline. They know each other. So they sail into someone who knows him. They have a personal matter. And the attacker is someone who came in to this man's office, barged in, probably a low traffic office. It's not going to have a big lobby with security trained concierge officers. Pardon me. This is a complete opposite of the Manhattan shooter. I think most of us know what a gasoline container is. Does it belong in an office? This is what I'm talking about. Situational awareness is full on. Everybody there knew this person should not be there. And he's going straight for his target, doused them, chased them outside, and set him on fire. Sadly, the councilman was not fast enough to be able to evade him. But it's so dangerous because if you douse in gasoline, you're going to leave a trail. It just blows my mind how violent and quick this guy was. And we don't know what else is going on. So this poor guy is in a hospital in North Carolina in a burn unit. He's alive. This other guy actually, I think I heard on the radio, I don't know if this article says that the assailant actually wanted to kill him. So this is maybe he gave a full confession, not afraid to say why he was there. And it's pretty horrific, but the violence can come to the workplace. It could come to one's home. It could be anywhere. And I don't want to scare people unnecessarily, but that horrible things happen anywhere. At church, it could be a student council meeting, anywhere. And vigilance is something that we should put a high price on. So situational awareness really is vigilance. It is the acknowledgement that our environment may be penetrated by some violent or evil force that aims to disrupt the normal operation of society. And this is clearly opposite in the spectrum of violence whereby one about to carry out a horrible, violent act and is probably detected but not stopped, not enough layers to stop. The other one clearly shows what he's there to do, and people recognize it quickly because it's more overt. I think it's interesting. It's more overt. Yes, 5 gallons. Yes, that would make me pause. And that's a moment where people try to engage very quickly because we know what happens with fires. Seeing out of the corner of your eye someone carrying a rifle close to the body, we've seen like that glitch in the matrix. Do we pursue it? Do we call somebody? And if at least if we're wrong with good intentions, it's not a false report. But if we don't call, then we have even greater casualties and greater numbers. So you have to be able to weigh in the odds very quickly. And this is something as a mindset that has to be cultivated over time. But some people are quick to act. Yes, this is gasoline. Gasoline's dangerous. It could burn down the entire building. It can hurt a lot of people. And this individual made sure that everyone knew what he was there to do. Sometimes it's hidden in plain sight, and sometimes it's not hidden at all. And maybe you'll get something in between. Sometimes it's something that people can say, a word or a sentence for phrasing of how somebody speaks, and can be something that can be detected or by one person. They think that the individual maybe get ready to do something, but that takes some fine tuning and be able to detect that. But it's also worthy of mentioning because people who are trained to listen very carefully, they know how to extract the information. An average person should not be average. And sadly, in this day and age, being average is just not good for survival. And I wish that there weren't this many incidents. I don't think they happen daily, where we should definitely be more concerned, but more concerned about the fact that people consider them to be normal, that they expect it, they see it, they expect something to happen, and they don't step up. Not stepping up. But when I reiterate, do not step up to sacrifice yourself when you can observe quickly and report and then seek safety. That's a reasonable form of engagement from someone who's not in security or in law enforcement. And even being law enforcement, sometimes serving and reporting until we get more help. It's a smart thing to do. And the both cases is very sad, but it should be a sobering call for practitioners and public to, when we pay attention, when somebody says, what was it TSA? If you see something, say something, or DHS, that's very subjective, because what is a threat? I consider a threat being a trained professional versus somebody just going to the supermarket. And like the Walmart knifing incident, there's someone with a gun and concealed carry person. I know you said that's former Marine. I get it. This person has some training already in their minds where they can engage. You have to be able to weigh the risks. That's a moment where you can stop. Stopping someone on the spot is the best policy for keeping them from hurting more or killing more people. So that was successful, and people still got hurt. There's not a video about knife fights or anything, because blatant instrument attacks are just, you're going to get caught. But the survival is always worth living, is always worth fighting for. Not necessarily dying for, but at least the fight is definitely in some people. And I think we need to get that back. And the fight really is, like I said, not necessarily engaging themselves directly, but actually absorbing and then analyzing long enough to be able to make the call and tell a 911 operator, this is how it's gone down, send help. And then those who can engage in protective services and be able to neutralize that threat in command and do so. And that's enough preaching for the first weekend of August. Started out on a really nice note. There's no torrential rains. Thank you to the Lord. And the heat has come down to tolerable levels, and always appreciative of that. Even more appreciating that you being here, taking a few minutes to listen to me and watch the video. Feel free to share, like, and subscribe. And I hope to see you again soon.